Greetings, magical mavens! In this relaxing witchy garden vlog video, I am inviting you to join me in the next installment of my green witch journey to transform my boring apartment into a magical homestead. As I mentioned in a recent video, this past spring has been one of the most difficult times in my life due to a death in my immediate family. So while this video is coming to you a bit later than I would have hoped, it will be taking you along with me on my gardening journey for mid to late May. And as I'm now catching up with getting videos edited and posted, pretty soon in the next few weeks, we will be back to closer to real-time garden updates. Fingers crossed, so stay tuned for that. But in this video, you'll get to come along with me as I begin moving my seedlings out from under the indoor grow lamp and into the greenhouse, as well as starting to harden some of them off, potting them up, and planting them out into the garden bed. Our slow to start spring season here starts to show more dramatic changes in the trees outside during this video, and it's also in this video that the patio area really transforms from a porch into an actual garden filled with plants. We're also starting microgreens just from some basic dry grocery store beans, and we'll be chatting about the magic of tomato plants and how to propagate a variety of different grocery store produce, including herbs. I'm also sharing with you some of the tips I'm picking up about foraging, plant identification, and how to work with the unique microclimates of each of our own individual garden spaces, because they're all a little bit different. And stay tuned to the end where we have a little witchy chit chat about Feng Shui in the garden, as well as just how to work with magical modalities in general, only in so much as they're useful, rather than in any superstitious or detrimental way. As always with my vlog videos, there will be a mix of some enchanting, no-talking scenes for your relaxation and entertainment, as well as some more interactive and informational chit-chats about how manifestation and gardening can inform one another in your practice. There is a lot of magical gardening to do in this one, so let's go ahead and dive in. What do you think, guys? Is it time? Good morning, magical mavens. It is Sunday, May 8th. We are officially after what the almanac calls our last frost date, and the 10-day forecast is finally showing that it's actually gonna be spring, like probably somewhat consistently. It's gonna be quite warm for the next several days, and then in 9 or 10 days at night it's going to get as low as 39 one night. But I think it's time. I think it's time definitely to start hardening things off, and I think it's also time to start potting some things up and potting them on, as the gardeners say. Are you ready, Mowgli? Let's do it. Oh my gosh, you guys. Do you ever have that moment when you realize that something has shifted and it's taken you a second to catch up? I guess it's actually time to just pull this whole container out and lower this whole awkward contraption, because at this point I'm going to be going in here more and more. Almost everything in here is now useful to me, and anything that isn't could go into a smaller receptacle, and I could use this container for something in the garden, because I'm pretty sure that was the plan last year when I put this whole thing together. So it's time. Is it time, Mowgli? Are you gonna help? Yeah, you're gonna help. Well, would you look at that? That is quite a forest of seedlings. I'm probably gonna need more plant pots, you guys, but I just went outside to potentially grab some things out of the greenhouse to also pot up or pot on or whatever. And I realized it's actually really nice out there, even though it's mid-morning, which means it is spring. So let's just take this whole little situation outdoors. That is a beautiful tray of seedlings, and it smells like chlorophyll. I'm all right now. just sorting out the seedlings and things that are still in here. I have a pile here of things that didn't make it. I think I'm just gonna do a few more of these anyway. Well, folks, this is our countertop tomato plant. Now, I don't know if this got totally dried out because it was hanging above a radiator, or if it's just because this was a determinate tomato variety that was not going to survive the transplant from whatever greenhouse, whatever fabulous greenhouse it was growing in, to the grocery store to my house. But these were some really good tomatoes. I saved a bunch of seeds. Some of them are currently thriving. It'll be, I'm sure, a very long time before I actually get to taste these tomatoes again, but the plants are growing and thriving. And I'm gonna eat the last of these and be grateful for this manifestation. I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous video, but I totally manifested this in a weird way. I was at a grocery store and I saw that these were for sale, but I talked myself out of getting it because I was like, oh, it's probably too early. I know tomatoes don't really like to live inside. I don't know. I don't think it's gonna make it, so I didn't get it. And then shortly after I got home, my sister randomly showed up at my house unannounced with the tomato plant. So I guess I was meant to have it. Thank you, Rika. But yeah, I think I was right though about the fact that this wasn't really going to survive for too long. And that's okay because it had a lot of tomatoes on it. I got to watch some of the tomatoes ripen. Like that little guy there just finished ripening. And it's great. And I got the seeds and they're growing, and this is the circle of life. Until the next cycle, my friend. But tonight, we're gonna eat these. So, fun fact that I recently learned about tomatoes while researching microgreens. Apparently, the foliage of tomatoes is poisonous, and the reason why is because tomatoes are in the nightshade family. And that makes so much sense because let me know if you can relate to this. But when I was a little kid, we had nightshade growing on our porch, and my sisters and I decided that the berries that came off of them were Barbie tomatoes. Thankfully, we were smart enough to not make them something that we would eat, but they were Barbie tomatoes. They would cut them open. They looked like tomatoes on the inside. It was just a cool coincidence to us, but apparently it really is. I don't know why tomatoes are edible and nightshade berries are poisonous, but I just remembered that because I went to put the dead plant by the door so that I could compost it tomorrow, but I decided to make sure I put it up just in case the cat got the munchies, because I did recently learn that the foliage is nightshade. And I just went to harvest some of my green onions here, and I noticed there's a little bulb on that one. So I guess that means it's going to seed, perhaps? I have no idea. I was going to show you, these are at the point with the grocery store scallions where I have harvested them quite a few times now, and they're likely never going to get bigger than that anymore after I harvest this bit. So I think I'm going to actually pull these all the way out and just eat all of the edible parts of them and grab some more of these next time I'm at the grocery store. Another fun little green witchy tip for you. This is the central stem of the sage plant, which I pruned and harvested. So if you ever feel bad cutting your herb plants, first of all, every gardener seems to say that the best way to keep your herbs growing abundantly is to cut them. And if you cut them properly, right above a leaf node, you can encourage more bushy growth, and then you can also eat most of the leaves and save this central stem. This is the top central stem of the plant. I harvested the ones from below it and around it, and now I'm just gonna pop this in water and start the process all over again. I am like well on my way to having an endless supply of sage this year, so that's nice. Greetings, magical mavens. I just wanted to pop in with a quick little garden update. So you've pretty much seen where everything is at from the previous few clips, but I just wanted to talk you through a little bit of what's going on. So I decided to plant some things out knowing that I can sort of greenhouse some stuff. So I put the beets outside of the greenhouse thingy because beets can handle a variety of temperatures, including dropping to pretty low temperatures. So Those seem to be doing great. And then inside, I have a couple of cucumber plants up at the front there. They're gonna trellis up eventually. And squashes need a little bit more of a consistent warm temperature, which is why I put them underneath. And then in the back there are just some brassicas, which could be out and about, but I figured why not put them under there too and just kind of see how those ones go. So there's some radishes over there. One of them is sticking out, so it'll be interesting to see like which one does better. And then there's also some cauliflower in there. And I've already kind of given you guys a greenhouse tour. It's pretty much all of the seedlings that have true leaves and are not necessarily something that I think is ready for the random temperatures that we're having this spring. And those things look like they are seriously thriving. So currently I do have my grow lamp going pretty much the same hours that my indoor grow lamp would be going, but I kind of turn it off a little bit earlier just so there isn't like a super bright light at like 11 p.m. or whatever. Not that I think anyone cares, but I try to be respectful. And those things are doing great in there. It does seem to maintain a higher temperature than whatever temperature is outside, as long as I don't keep opening and closing it constantly to get videos and to put things in and out of it. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a moisture going on. So it's creating a little bit more of a humid environment, which I think is good for most of these plants. So we will see how that goes. So I've been trying to identify what that thing is that's popping up in that pot. I would really like to believe that it's my mom's coming back because that was the intention. But I tried to use the map to identify it, and it identified it as something completely different that may or may not even be from here. So I'm just gonna let it grow and see what happens. There are a couple of other little like solar panel thingies popping up in there as well. I don't know if they're the same thing or something different, but we haven't had our fuzzy season yet. So I don't know where you guys live, if it's like that where you guys live, but here we have this thing that I like to call fuzzy season, which is basically where all of the trees and everything just start giving off these fuzzy seed pods that float through the air. People who are allergic to them have a horrible time. It gets stuck in everything. You might have seen some videos from last year where this fuzzy stuff was just in the rug, in the hairy plants, right? Like cucumbers, for example, have hairy foliage, and the fuzzy stuff was just stuck in there. It just looked like everything was covered in cobwebs. I kind of like it. I think it's kind of cool, and I'm not horribly allergic to it, but we haven't had that season yet, and that is the season when I am constantly picking weeds out of my stuff, even up here on a second story balcony. So unless they're like leftover from last year or something, there's a good chance that that is actually what I planted. So we will see. Out here, we just have some things that I wanted to sort of harden off outside of the greenhouse, and generally things that don't need really high temperature. So there's my lettuces up there. There's the wildflowers that I got from the dollar store that say that they are shade loving. There's also a basil plant over there. I think there's some dill down there. And I'm trying arugula over there again. I don't know, like I really want to grow arugula, but I've had the worst time with it. We will see. And yeah, this is the side of the garden that really doesn't get very much light. The only direct light that this gets is maybe for an hour, because here's what the sun does. The sun starts right there, at least this time of year. It starts there, comes all the way up here. It's like right there at 11 o'clock, which is pretty much where we're at right now, where it's like pretty sunny here, and then it goes around that south side of the house. So this area right here is already in shade, and it's still morning, but it is close to the light. So I'm hoping that some of the more shade loving things will like it right there. We will see. The tulips are giving me life right now. I really hope they come back year after year. And I do have hope, because even though based on my research, daffodils are more likely to be hardy and come back year after year than tulips are, well, first of all, I think those tulips across the street have been coming back year after year. I'm not sure. But then also my partner has tulips in his yard that come up year after year. And he also said that his mom growing up had some tulips that she planted once, and they came back year after year, and she literally neglected them. So I'm hoping that I get to keep these. Now, as for the potatoes, which are over here, I planted those weeks ago because I had a really nice day earlier in the spring and I wanted to get out and do something in the garden. And I was kind of scared because it was before I tested the pH of my soil, so I didn't know if it was going to survive. And it also was just an experiment that was, really early in the spring. And I hadn't seen any signs of life, knowing that potatoes tend to grow pretty quickly in my experience. So I was kind of worried, but I did dig through there and all three of the ones that I planted are alive and well. I think the reason they seem to be growing really slowly was just because I kind of forgot the thing about potatoes where you're only supposed to bury them like halfway up the container, like only fill the container up halfway at first until you start to see the green shoots come out, and then you go ahead and bury them a second time. So I've undug them a little bit, and then when I start seeing those green come up, then I'm gonna go ahead and fill it in. But they're like right in there and they are coming up. So I'll keep you posted on that. And here we have some experiments going. So as I mentioned last night, I just kind of decapitated one of these to make my dinner, took the leaves that were in the middle and then left the central stem. This time I actually just, as an experiment, popped it down into the cocoa coir, whereas normally I would put it in water to make sure that I'm able to watch the roots grow and know that they're growing. But I know you could possibly do it this way, so we will see how that goes. This is still just my experimental bit of wild onion here. I'm curious to see the multiplication process of that. I guess that's what that experiment is for. Now, those of you guys who are into foraging, can you please identify this? I'm gonna try and use the app, but like I said, I don't really trust that app. I do feel like I recently learned about this plant, and I feel like I learned about it years ago too, but I don't remember what it is. I feel like this is something that's edible and something that's thought of as a weed that's like actually really good for you, but I don't know what it is. So help me out here. That said, I picked this just in the photo shoot with my sister a couple of days ago, and I noticed that it did come up with some roots, so I put it in water, let the roots develop a little bit, and then I popped it in cocoa coir. Everything seemed to be fine until yesterday when that flopped over. I don't know if it's just because it physically couldn't hold itself up, but I am rooting for these. So why? I don't know, because I don't even know what this is, but it's beautiful, isn't it? And I think this is kind of where my brain is going with this. There is a part of me that wants to have at least one pot on my porch that is like natural stuff from my natural area. And even if that ends up being like the whatever thing is coming up in the mum container, I might turn that into a little like wild area. Wouldn't that be fun? I think that would be fun. All right, moving on. This is another milkweed experiment. This is one that has been in the refrigerator for a while. And but like I planted it first and then it wasn't growing, so then I put the whole little container in the fridge and then I took it out. I'm not seeing signs of life in this one, but we will see. This is what I kind of wanted to draw your attention to today. So these are some more chitted potatoes that I think I'm gonna put into some little containers and let them start growing a little. And then I'll come up with larger containers for them later. These two here are just more of the actual purple seed potatoes that I got from the hardware store. But these three are actually just some organic potatoes that I got from the grocery store. That it came in like a variety pack, so there's like a white potato, a red potato, and a purple potato that looks like it's different from these. So I thought it would just be fun to have more varieties. Isn't that fun? So let's pot those up today. And here's, again, another one of these random flowers that I picked that I think looks really cool. I don't know if it's more of that one or like if that's how it looks when it's younger. Probably not, but that one has some serious root growth going on. So I'm gonna try and identify that one. And that's just my herb propagations, which we talked about yesterday. And while we're in the fridge, while we're in the kitchen, I wanna plant some more of these US grown organic blueberries, because I've noticed that my strawberries are starting to grow, which is really exciting. So I know it is possible to grow berries from fruit, but for some reason my blueberries didn't work out. I think they got moldy or something. So I'm going to try this again 2 different ways. I'm going to try cutting this in half and planting the whole fruit. And I'm also going to try extracting some of the seeds and planting them on their own, and I will see which one does better. Alright, so here we have our halved fruit. They're little seeds. I'm going to plant them cut side up. And then here's a bunch of seeds that I've extracted, some of which I'm going to plant, others of which I'm going to dry and save. So in case you didn't catch a previous video where I touched upon this, the reason why we're using US grown organic is not necessarily just to be patriotic or to be obsessed with organic stuff, even though those things are fine if you want to support local farmers and have an organic diet. But the real reason, for me at least, is because I've learned that if you want to grow plants from their fruit that you get at the grocery store, it needs to be, if you're in the US, it needs to be from the US, because anything that's imported gets zapped in the transportation process in order to prevent diseases or whatever, and there's a good chance that the seeds will no longer be viable, which is a little bit weird. It's like, is it still healthy for you? I don't know, but in any case, you definitely want to make sure that the seeds are viable, and then it might as well be organic, because like, hey, if you're gonna grow stuff, why not go for the best? And if it's organic, I feel like there's probably also a better chance that it won't be grafted in some way. That makes the propagation harder to do, because that is the case with some things. Like I think it's true with some potatoes. They might be grafted so that they can produce the potatoes and you have to buy them and you can't regrow them, and or if they don't chit themselves in your fridge, you're going to have more time to eat it. So there's a couple different reasons why they might graft them that way, but you just want to make sure you have something that's actually going to grow for you, and it might as well be organic, right? That being said, do I have some things growing right now, and have I tried growing things in the past before I knew that information that have worked? Yeah, I actually have some tomatoes growing right now that I'm pretty sure were imported, but they are growing, so we'll see how that goes. And I think the peppers that I've planted, I don't know where they came from, and I don't think that they were marked organic, but those are growing too. So you can try it with various things. Just be aware that if you're banking on it, you definitely want to try and give yourself the best shot at success. The reason why I'm really focusing on that for the berries is because I have tried planting berry seeds many, many times, and it's never worked. This is the first time right now that I actually have some seeds that look like they are starting to sprout, and I'm betting that part of the reason for that is because I wasn't using US grown and or organic. And now I guess I'm wondering if maybe the reason why I was able to get vegetables to grow without checking those stats and not berries is maybe because berry seeds are so tiny that maybe they're more likely to become inviable in that process. I have no idea. This is all just one big experiment. So I just realized I'm pretty much out of coco coir for the moment. Gonna need to get some more of that because I know I'm gonna be starting seeds probably throughout the whole summer. Definitely more flower seeds because some of them are tricky, and others of them I might just want more of. So that being said, I did just recycle the potting medium that the tomato plant was in. There's probably not a ton of nutrients left in it, but that's okay because seedlings don't really need nutrients yet. And I have a feeling this is going to be really good to work with. So here we go. That'll be a little bit experimental, but that's what we do here. So I think what I'm gonna do, since I seem to know from experience that berry seeds can be a little bit temperamental and that things like this can potentially rot in the wrong conditions, I think I'm going to use the last of the pure cocoa coir for these, and then I'm going to do the potatoes in here because I know potatoes are a bit more forgiving, and it is advisable to put some semblance of like nutrients in with potatoes since they are already raring to go. All right, so we've got our red seed potatoes in a mix of mostly cocoa coir with a little bit of compost. I think that's kind of the sweet spot for those. We've got our two different experiments, I should say, of blueberries started. And you did notice that the ones that I did that were just seed was in that one that was mixed a little bit, that wasn't totally sterile. Wish me luck, I just honestly ran out of the pure cocoa coir for the moment. And then these, I actually decided instead of planting these today, I was just gonna slice them. And that way I will have extra plants. So essentially you just wanna cut each potato so that there's a section like this with, I guess these are called chits or spuds or whatever, with a spud on each one, or at least one spud on each one. And you don't want to plant them right away because this open edge can actually get infected. So you just want to leave it out for a day so that it develops a little bit of a sort of skin over that, and then you can go ahead and plant it. So I'm going to put all of these back on the windowsill for the moment. Those ones I'm going to let dry completely, and I'm going to put them in one of my seed packets tomorrow. Also, just a quick fun little update about the morning glories. I've also just noticed that morning glories grow really fast. And I think I remember that now from growing them a couple of years ago. So if you just want to grow some flowery vine things, get some sort of cottage witchy energy going on your balcony or your garden really quickly, I do recommend planting morning glories. I literally planted that. You guys saw me planting this, and literally the next morning, I think I planted those in the evening time, and literally the next morning, it was already coming up, and this one is starting to come up too. So some quick instant gratification for you. And while we're here, might as well just give you a quick seedling update. That lettuce from the lettuce seeds that I grew last year, still kind of growing much more slowly than the other lettuces that I got this year. I don't know if that's because it's older or because it was in that weird pink shell that was supposed to make it like easier to sow them or whatever. But there they are. I just have them farther back because I know they don't need as much direct light. This is the one milkweed that is successfully growing. So far, so good with that one. Wish me luck. Hopefully more of them come up at some point. I don't know what the special thing is with that. I replanted some thyme seeds. No signs of life just there yet that I can see. This is a bell pepper that's, I don't know if it made it or not because they typically start to show signs of life. When did I plant this? I don't even know. These were some cosmos. I don't know why one of them wilted, but that one's doing great. Hopefully some more of them come up. Here's a bell pepper that looks like it is doing great. And here are some of the mini peppers that are already starting to come up. Now these were not organic and they are starting to grow. So that's an example of one of those ones that does work. That's a bell pepper that's been growing pretty slowly, but they're not the fastest growers, so that's okay. So I had a bunch of yarrow come up and it then started to wilt. So there's one that seems to be surviving and the rest of them seem to be wilting. I don't know if I overwatered them or if I underwatered them at some point. Might reseed those, but the daisy that I reseeded is now starting to come up, so that's exciting. Still wondering what the deal is with these mini sunflowers. It's like for every one that makes it, there's one that doesn't. So I don't know. I might just need to try a different kind of sunflower. Some marigolds coming up. That's exciting, especially after all the millions of times that I tried to use my old marigold seeds from the old house. That didn't work. Finally got some new ones, so I'm excited for those. There's a new Canterbury bell coming up, so hopefully that works this time. There are some catnip bits that are coming up. I don't get it. It's like with some plants, they have a much lower germination rate. I don't know if it's something I'm doing wrong, or I know some plants actually do just genuinely have a much lower germination rate. So I'm gonna have to do some research and see if I'm doing something wrong or if it's normal to plant like 10 seeds and only have 2 of them come up. Still waiting on the Walla Walla onion, but I actually just learned something about onions, guys. If you have ever had a hard time growing bulb onions, apparently they're very tricky. And one of the tricks is that your local seed store is probably selling you seeds that are not meant to grow in your area. Now, that being said, after the research that I've done, I think the one that I have is supposed to grow in my area, but I haven't had much luck with it, and that might just be because I don't get full sun on my porch. But in any case, some of them, sometimes it won't germinate, and if it does, there's a chance that you're gonna get something that's more like those green onions that we have in the fridge, the ones that are like as thick as your finger, as opposed to the actual big bulb that it's supposed to be, which is fine, but it's like it takes a very long time, and you kind of have to carve out space for it to not end up getting what you thought you were getting. I don't know if I'm gonna do onions again in the near future, because I'm also realizing if I just buy green onions, I can grow them, and that's most likely what I'm going to end up with if I try to grow bulb onions. Anyway, we'll see what happens. There is that tiny little white speck in the middle is a sign of life in the new black-eyed Susans. Don't know why the last ones grew and then died, but wish me luck this time. And there is a sign of life in the Canterbury bells as well. I'm not sure if you can see that. Still waiting for signs of life in the raspberry, but look at that. See that tiny little speck of green? That is some strawberries coming up, so I'm really excited for that. I reseeded some chamomile because the chamomile in the bedroom, like, it was doing great, and now it's looking kind of sad. Experiments, guys, experiments. So, correction, I earlier said that I was going to identify these using the Picture This app, which I actually didn't. I think I used to have that app back in the day, but when I went to re-download it, they apparently want you to sign up for like a free trial and put in all your information, and I did not feel like doing that, especially because I know some of these things are not satisfyingly accurate. So I'm actually using PlantNet. And like I said, the one that I tried to identify yesterday, I don't think was right, but this one definitely seemed to be right away. This is ground ivy, aka creeping Charlie, and there's a whole bunch of other common names for it as well. And I remember identifying this years ago when I had a yard. And apparently this is both edible and potentially medicinal as an astringent and an expectorant. Is that where it makes you cough? I think that's the word. And apparently it came from Europe because it was used for food, it was used for making ale, and it was used in folk medicine. But it's considered invasive here, mainly because people don't want it on their lawns. But I like this stuff. I love how it has purple leaves and flowers. And I actually think that I threw these on some of my salads back when I used to have a yard, which was really fun. So I'm excited to be growing this guy again. So this one I've had a much harder time identifying, but it's most likely black horehound, which again is not native to this area, but one of the places in the US where it does grow is the East. So it's most likely that. I'm going to definitely need to do some more research, but if it is horehound, it is edible. This one, there was just a lot less information, so I will keep you posted on that one. Either way, isn't it pretty? And finally, for our garden update this morning, I just wanted to show you guys this. So this was literally from yesterday, our lentil microgreens. Not yesterday. Was it yesterday or was it 2 days ago? Anyway, as you can see, they're already starting to sprout. Now, some people would let these sprout for maybe 1 or 2 more days and then eat them. But I think those are the people that don't put coco coir in there and they just put it in like a damp container. And then they just take them out and eat them. I'm gonna grow them as actual microgreens as opposed to sprouts, which is where they start to grow up. And they'll get about, I don't know, up to there. I don't know if they get any tall. Okay, so here's what happened last year. I grew these as microgreens and I just kept cutting them back and eating them, like the cut and come again method, until eventually they just kind of didn't really grow anymore. And then there were a few that I tried to grow like normal plants, and I don't remember them getting much bigger than this. And they never really did anything. Like, I never got more beans out of it. So that might be something I would want to look into. But in any case, if you just want to always have salad greens, this is a really good way to do it. So I'm going to leave the lid on it for a few more days, and then when it starts to kind of get a little bit taller, I'm going to expose it to light, and then it'll start to go green. Good evening, magical mavens. So I've just spent over an hour actually sitting outside during the sort of sundown phase. I was just catching up on a recorded workshop, and I've been feeling into some things because that has been the first time that I've like really just sat there, particularly with this new privacy fence thingy this year. And so one thing that I really noticed is to do with Feng Shui, I guess. I don't know if it's like official Feng Shui or not, but like having that space covered totally changes the energy here. Because in the past, I felt like there was literally like toxic energy coming towards me constantly, like poison arrows, as they call it in Feng Shui, coming at me because there's so much traffic coming. I mean, it comes both ways, but especially like if I'm sitting here, it feels like it's literally coming at me. And it's kind of not good energy, right? And it kind of got me thinking about the way I relate to Feng Shui. And I realized, of course, it's the same way I relate to any and all of the modalities. Long story short, I take the parts that resonate and I leave the parts that don't, knowing that the parts that don't resonate now might resonate later in a different situation, and or vice versa. The parts that are resonating with me now might not be as relevant in a future situation. So there is one thing that I know about Feng Shui that I know this building is bad for, and it's the concept of a T, I think it's called a T junction, or even a four-way intersection. So there's a literal four-way intersection right there, and like for cars. And then right here, there's this thing called like a T junction, which is where there's foot traffic going there, and then it like comes in this way. And that also has that same concept of like volatile energy coming in. And I definitely feel that here. I feel like there's just too much going on. A lot of it doesn't vibe with me, and it feels like it's relentless. That's the sort of overarching energy that I feel in this space in general. Now, that being said, because I'm at a situation in my life where those things are already wearing down on me, remedying those things does definitely seem to make sense. Putting this screen up feels so much more comforting. It feels like I'm in a little room here where I'm more so experiencing the traffic going by as opposed to feeling the traffic coming at me. So at this phase in my life, being aware of those concepts of feng shui is helpful so that I'm able to remedy it. Now, on the other hand, we have another feng shui faux pas going on here that's in the opposite situation. So having a mirror reflecting your bed is considered bad feng shui. And it's because I don't fully understand this, but the way I've heard it described is that like it's inviting other entities either into your life or into your relationship. Since the bed is supposed to be like the marriage bed or whatever, it's like inviting a third person into the relationship or inviting outside influences into the relationship in a potentially negative way. Now, do me and my partner both have mirrors pointing at our beds? Yes, we do. And am I bothered by it? No. And I think the reason for that is because I'm in such a healthy and secure relationship, and I'm in a place in my life where I'm not worried about that. I don't feel bothered by it. And if you want to look at it as like entities in general, I'm not someone that experiences like spirits and paranormal and stuff like that. And it doesn't particularly bother me or keep me up at night, and I'm not worried about it. And I think that that is me not consenting to that aspect of reality. So like if I were someone who really did believe in that and really did have experiences with that and was worried about that, then I probably would need to cover that mirror up or get rid of it, because then I would be able to sleep better and I would have better energy. But since those are not areas of my life where I have problems, I don't think that there's a problem with that. You know what I mean? So that's my little random talk about something I never talk about on this channel, feng shui. And the reason I don't really talk about it is because I do not know a ton about it. I've kind of done some delves into it a few different times, and I also don't entirely know how I feel about it. So I guess tonight I'm having a realization of being able to put into words how I feel about it after having dabbled in it in a sort of cherry picking kind of way for years now. It's just the same way it is with every modality. You need to work with it in the way that it's helpful to you at this phase in your life, and not work with it in a way where it's causing more problems than it's solving, if that makes sense. So for example, if I were in a relationship like my previous relationship, where I did have a ton of anxiety about the relationship in general, as well as potential loyalty issues, would knowing that having a mirror in the bedroom is said to create problems in that area bother me? Probably. That would make sense. I might want to really focus on the feng shui of the areas that are supposed to deal with relationships. I would, if I had known at the time, taken a deeper dive into that. But I don't feel like it's necessary at this phase of my life, because the other elements are supporting me enough that that's not able to weigh in very much, right? And same thing with this. If I moved into a house that was perfect, that I absolutely loved, and the energy was all working for me, and it happened to have a T-junction or be relatively close to some kind of a four-way intersection, would that necessarily bother me? Probably not. It probably would not be able to weigh in so much that I would feel like I would really need to remedy it, or maybe I would remedy it a little bit, but like not be too concerned about it, right? So what do you guys think about things like feng shui? I say things like because I think all modalities in my personal practice are in that same boat, where it's like it's only useful so much as it's useful. And when it gets to the point where it's superstitious and it's actually stressing you out to think about it more so than the thing itself would actually even be bothering you, that's when you need to reassess. And I think it's possible to take any modality to an unnecessary extreme or to a place of moderation where it actually makes sense and is helpful. So it's always my goal to be in that healthy place with any modality that interests me.